He buried me alive on Christmas night. Not with violence, with organized indifference. I was sitting at the table I'd been preparing since early morning. The food was hot, the house was full, and I was trying to exist without getting in the way. When I started to speak, he talked right over my sentence like I hadn't even opened my mouth. He kept going, assigning tasks, deciding everything, with that calm tone nobody challenges. Nobody noticed when I disappeared. Or they noticed and thought it was normal. My husband did that to me in front of everyone. He cut me off, corrected me, finished my thoughts for me. He smiled. He put his hand on my shoulder like he was protecting me. I shrank, not out of fear, out of habit. That's how humiliation works when it repeats for years. It teaches your body to hide. While the family laughed, something in me started to fail. The food lost its taste. The air felt thin. My chest tightened out of nowhere. It wasn't me being dramatic. It was my body understanding before my mind did that I'd been pushed out of my own home. In that moment, I realized something cruel. Burying someone doesn't require strength. It requires method, small commands, light jokes, decisions made without asking, slowly taking away someone's air until they learn not to take up space. I stayed there through the end of dinner, alive and invisible, waiting for it to be over. But inside, something had already left. When you disappear on the inside, you don't come back the same. If you've ever felt erased like that, maybe this story is yours too. Leave a like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to breathe again. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching this story from? After that night, the house kept running like always. The routine didn't stop to ask me anything. Coffee got made, chairs went back in place, conversations kept going. On the outside, everything looked normal. On the inside, I started seeing the machinery. He always liked order. At least that's what I called it. Everything had a time, a place, a sequence. I confused control with efficiency because it was easier that way. That morning, I noticed something I'd never put into words. The house ran better when I didn't have an opinion. I executed, he decided. While I cleaned up the kitchen, I remembered how it started. It wasn't aggressive. Early in our marriage, I talked a lot, laughed loud, had opinions. He'd say I was too spontaneous, that sometimes I got worked up. Little by little, I adjusted my tone so I wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. I thought that was maturity. That Christmas, I saw the final result of that adjustment. The commands came soft, almost polite. Let me handle that. You can say something later. It's better this way. Small sentences repeated for years until they became an invisible rule. I obeyed without realizing I was erasing myself. There was a moment when I tried to organize something my way. He corrected me in front of everyone with that calm smile. Nobody thought it was strange. Neither did I. My body did. My hands went cold. My shoulders lifted. My breathing got shallow. The same signal as always, ignored out of politeness. While the family talked, I felt a strange kind of loneliness. It wasn't lack of people, it was lack of a place. I was there as a function, not as a presence. I served, I agreed, I moved around. I didn't sit there fully as myself. When dinner ended, a heavy tiredness fell over me. It wasn't sleepiness. It was the exhaustion of existing in silence. I grabbed my coat without announcing anything. Nobody asked where I was going. That hurt more than any comment. I left because I needed air, but also because I realized I could leave without anyone missing me. Outside, the cold woke me up. I walked with no destination, feeling my body slow down. The relief came mixed with fear. For the first time in a long time, I was alone with myself, and it wasn't emptiness. It was space. As I walked, old scenes lined up. Other tables, other dinners, the same gentle interruption. Distance organized what I'd avoided seeing up close. It wasn't a bad day. It was a long pattern, well trained. When I decided to go back, it wasn't reconciliation. It was observation. The door opened slowly. The house was too quiet. Before I could say anything, he pulled me into a long, firm, practiced hug. My body didn't relax. It stayed alert. That's when I felt something shift. Not in him, in me. I still didn't know what I would do, but I knew that hug wasn't affection, and that quiet certainty started to redraw everything. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of misalignment, like something that had always been crooked had finally been noticed. He was already awake, on the phone, organizing the day, writing down appointments that included me without asking, saying we naturally. I listened in silence, for the first time without adjusting myself on the inside. As he talked, an old memory surfaced whole. I was in my early 30s when this started. I remembered a lunch with friends early in our marriage when I told a story with too much enthusiasm. He laughed and said, "She exaggerates." Everyone laughed. So did I. I thought it was charming. I thought it was care. That day, without realizing it, I turned my volume down. Back in the present, I saw the same gesture dressed differently. The exclusions never came alone. They were prepared. Small decisions always made before me. Invitations handed out like controlled access. When I asked, he answered with practiced patience. Trust me. I trusted him for years. Now I was observing. That afternoon, he made an innocent comment in front of a relative. Said I'd been a little forgetful lately. It was light, almost affectionate. Others nodded. My body reacted immediately. A sudden heat in my face, my throat tightening. That wasn't carelessness. It was method, a social signal that I wasn't the reference point. For the first time, I didn't try to fix the image. I didn't explain myself. I stayed quiet in a new way, alert. I noticed how he used humor to shut down any doubt and how people accepted it, relieved they didn't have to confront anything. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I opened a notebook and wrote the scene down. Date, exact words, context, no emotion, just facts. The act was simple, but it gave me my footing back. This wasn't in my head, it was happening. As I wrote, other situations became clear. The doctor's appointment where he answered for me. The trip decided without discussion. The meetings where I served but didn't sit. None of it seemed serious on its own. Together, it formed a system. I closed the notebook carefully. There was no anger there. There was recognition. I wasn't living through a one-off misunderstanding. I was inside a structure that diminished me politely. In that moment, I accepted a hard truth. This wouldn't be resolved through an emotional conversation. Systems don't fall because someone asks nicely. They fall when someone stops obeying. I didn't know yet how I would do that. I only knew I couldn't keep pretending it was a misunderstanding. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my body alert. The confusion was over. In its place came something more demanding, clarity. And clarity demands positioning. I was still there, but I was no longer the same. Something had been crossed. And after that, there's no comfortable way back. The sentence came in the middle of the afternoon, when the house was already emptier. It wasn't said to me. It was said about me. He commented with a light smile that I'd been a little confused lately. Then he added something about age, like a joke meant to ease the mood. No one reacted badly. No one reacted well. Everyone accepted it. I felt the impact before I understood it. My body froze for a few seconds. The sounds around me seemed distant, as if I'd been pushed out of the scene. There was no yelling, no direct insult. There was framing. He had just defined who I was in that room. I remembered another similar comment years earlier when I was still working outside the home. At a gathering with friends, he said, "I got confused with details." I laughed back then. Thought it was a joke. That afternoon, I saw the line connecting everything. The joke wasn't innocent. It was recurring. Other people's laughter sealed the agreement. Not because they agreed with him, but because no one wanted to disagree. The collective silence did the rest. That's when I understood something essential. Isolation isn't being left alone. It's being discredited in front of others. I stood up to get some water. My legs felt strangely weak. On the way, I heard another comment, even smaller. "She's been sensitive." Sensitive became justification. Any reaction from me, from that point on, would be evidence against me. The game was set. When I came back, He made space on the couch with a public gesture of kindness. I sat out of politeness. His hand rested on my leg for too long, too firmly. It wasn't affection. It was marking territory. My body stiffened. I stayed there only so I wouldn't confirm the role they'd just assigned me. In that moment, I made a small but concrete decision. I wouldn't argue about that sentence. I wouldn't try to defend myself. Defense feeds the framing. I needed to get out of range to recover a clear reading of what had just happened. I picked up my coat calmly. I didn't announce it. I didn't ask permission. No one asked anything. That absence of a question confirmed everything. When I opened the door, cold air rushed in, fast, direct, like a necessary shock. I took a deep breath for the first time that day. I walked a few blocks without direction. The sentence echoed, but it didn't hurt the same way anymore. Now it had a name, strategy, understanding that changed my internal position. It wasn't fragility, it was social manipulation. As I walked, I thought about how much I'd explained myself over the years. How many times I tried to seem balanced, kind, easy to deal with. There, for the first time, I didn't have to prove anything. Silence stopped being submission. It became preparation. I still didn't know what I would do next, but I knew what I wouldn't do anymore. I would never again try to fit into a version of myself someone created to diminish me. That joke had been the final warning, and warnings, once recognized, changed the course of things. I spent almost an hour wandering that night. The cold on my face helped keep my thoughts awake. It wasn't escape, it was physical necessity. Each step felt like it was giving back some of the air that had been taken from me hours earlier. I sat on a park bench to rest. My still racing heart slowed down little by little. That's when I noticed something simple and frightening. Away from him, my body worked better. My breathing deepened. My shoulders dropped. My mind cleared. There was no tension to manage. I remembered when this started showing up. Months earlier, I'd already been losing my appetite. Food sat untouched on my plate for no clear reason. I woke up tired even after sleeping. At doctor's appointments, nothing showed up. I said it was age, routine, stress. Sitting there, I finally saw the invisible thread connecting everything. It wasn't sadness. It was constant vigilance. I lived alert to his moods, the right words, the right moment to speak or stay quiet. That kind of attention exacts a silent price. The body pays when the mind insists on adapting. As I watched the street, other scenes surfaced. An old dinner where I started talking and stopped mid-sentence because he cleared his throat. A meeting where I changed my opinion just to avoid contradicting him. Small adjustments repeated for years until they became posture. There on that bench, I did something practical. I took out my phone and wrote down 3 sentences I'd heard that week. That was it. No analysis, no emotion. It was enough to make my stomach turn. Written down, they sounded even clearer. They weren't slips, they were commands. When I decided to go home, it was already night. The door opened with a soft creak. The house was too quiet. He appeared in the hallway without asking where I'd been. He just stepped forward and wrapped me in a long, firm, calculated hug. My body didn't respond. It went rigid. I felt his hand press into my back with a pressure that didn't match affection. His breathing was short, uneven. I heard a whisper that sounded like care, but brought no comfort. In that moment, everything lined up inside me. It wasn't longing. It was fear. Fear of losing the control he'd always had over me. My body understood before any thought could form. I stayed still until he let go. When I stepped back, I knew something had shifted. Not in him, in me. I went upstairs without saying anything. I lay down, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling, my heart still alert. For the first time, I didn't try to normalize what had happened. I didn't look for an excuse. My body had delivered its verdict. That night I made a quiet, concrete decision. I would start observing with method. I wouldn't react impulsively. I wouldn't over-explain. I would document. I would protect my inner space. The exhaustion wasn't weakness. It was a signal. Sleep was still difficult, but something new was there. A kind of calm firmness. My body, finally listened to, began to trust. I hadn't left yet, but I had stopped cooperating with what was making me sick, and when the body stops cooperating, no control lasts very long. In the days that followed, something in my behavior changed without any announcement. I kept doing what I'd always done, but I stopped anticipating. I didn't finish interrupted sentences. I didn't adjust my tone to please. When he spoke for me, I let the silence fall. It was uncomfortable, but revealing. He noticed quickly. Control always notices when the mechanism fails. The questions started coming more often, disguised as concern. "Are you okay? You've been so quiet." I answered briefly, not out of conscious strategy, but out of economy. Every word I saved became a new boundary. At a family lunch, something small and decisive happened. He tried to repeat the pattern, interrupted me, made a light joke about my memory, finished my thought for me. I didn't react. I didn't laugh. I didn't defend myself. I kept eating. The discomfort spread slowly across the table. For the first time, the silence wasn't just mine. In the car, the accusation came. "You made me look bad." The words came out flat. For years, I'd carried that weight without noticing. Now he was trying to hand it back to me. I didn't answer right away. I looked at the road. I breathed. Then I said simply, I was speaking. There was no argument. There was impact. At home, he tried to reorganize the narrative, said I'd misunderstood, that I was sensitive, that he was only trying to help. Old words used with more urgency. I listened without moving inside. When someone has to explain that much, it's because control has lost its naturalness. That night, I did something practical. I gathered my personal documents into a simple folder. IDs, cards, papers that had always been mixed together. It wasn't leaving yet. It was preparation. The gesture gave me a new feeling of autonomy. I also began to guard my time with precision. I went for walks without over-announcing. I came back without reporting everything. It wasn't provocation, it was boundary. He tested with questions. I held steady with consistency. I realized he didn't ask how I was. He asked where I was, with whom, for how long. The problem was never my pain. It was always access. Understanding that dissolved the guilt that still tried to return. Lying in bed that night, I felt my body quieter, my heart alert, but not racing. Fear had changed function. It no longer pushed me into silence. It kept me attentive, and attentive is different from submissive. I knew that movement would have a cost. Controllers don't give up without reacting. But I also knew something new. I didn't need to defeat him. I needed to remain myself. And remaining yourself, after years of adapting, is a profound act of courage. There, without speeches, without announcements, I stopped explaining myself. And when a woman stops explaining herself, the game changes sides. I started creating small distances in my daily life. I didn't announce them. I just adjusted schedules, commitments, movements. I went out to take care of simple things without over-explaining. I came back without reporting every detail. It was subtle, but enough to provoke a reaction. He reacted quickly. Too many questions. Looks that lingered too long. An exaggerated attentiveness that didn't match affection. You've been hard to find. Is something going on? These weren't open questions. They were attempts to reposition me. The less I explained, the more he tried to close in. That's when something became obvious. Away from him, I thought clearly. Near him, my mind stayed on constant alert. It wasn't distraction. It was learned vigilance. I'd spent years watching myself through his eyes. Distance interrupted that reflex. One afternoon, I was alone at home for a few hours. I sat at the kitchen table, the same one from Christmas, and did nothing but observe. I noticed how everything there worked without my opinion. I kept the system running, but I didn't direct it. That wasn't coincidence. It was an old design. I remembered when I first agreed to that. I was 40. He said it was better if he handled the bigger decisions, and I took care of the rest. I agreed, thinking it was partnership. There, years later, I finally saw the cost of that silent agreement. When he came home, he sensed something different. He couldn't name it, but he felt it. He tried to regain control using the familiar resource, physical closeness, a prolonged hug, a constant touch while talking. I kept my body neutral. I didn't pull away. I didn't respond. The discomfort shifted to him. That night he said I was being cold. The word came out as an accusation. I heard it as an accurate diagnosis. Coldness was the absence of the panic that had always kept me compliant. I didn't correct him. I didn't explain. Sustained silence did the rest. In the following days, he tried another strategy. He started speaking in the plural. We decided. We thought it was best. I listened without confirming. Plural without consent is another form of erasure. For the first time, I didn't step into the sentence. I wrote it down in the notebook. Exact phrases, contexts, reactions, not to accuse later, but not to lose myself now. Writing continued to be my most reliable point of support. My body started responding to the new rhythm. I slept better. My appetite slowly returned. The tightness in my chest eased whenever I held a boundary. Not because the situation had changed, but because my position within it had. I understood something essential. The distance wasn't pulling me away from the marriage. It was giving me back to myself, and that's threatening to any dynamic that depends on confusion to survive. He would still try. I knew that, but I also knew something else now. I didn't need to rush to leave. Sometimes the exit begins when you stop offering yourself, and that movement, quiet on the outside, had already become irreversible on the inside. The confirmation didn't come as an accusation. It came as a casual comment, out of context, and precisely because of that, impossible to ignore. I was sitting with an acquaintance, someone who had always kept a certain distance from our marriage. We were talking about ordinary things when she said, without any special care, "I always thought it was strange how he speaks for you." The sentence landed clean. There was no intention to protect me. There was observation. I didn't answer right away. I just listened. That late validation didn't make me emotional. It organized me. What I was living wasn't invisible. I was just surrounded by complicit silence. I went home with that pulsing inside me. He was in the living room on his phone. When I approached, he stood up too quickly and pulled me into a short, public, calculated hug. He didn't ask. He didn't check. My body stayed neutral. He noticed. I began paying attention to details I'd always normalized. The way he physically positioned himself between me and other people. The shift in his tone when I spoke to someone without including him. The constant touch, always in public, always marking presence. It wasn't protection. It was social blocking. Days later, another confirmation came, even more direct. An old friend said I disappeared when he entered the room. It hurt because it was true. I shrank to avoid correction. That had a name now. And when something gets a name, it loses part of its power. I didn't confront anyone. I didn't spread anything. I protected the process. Waking up requires discretion. Any explanation given too early becomes a target. I needed to cross this phase whole. He felt the change. The surveillance increased. More frequent questions. Attempts to track my schedule. Subtle comments about my absence. I answered with minimal precision. Enough not to provoke. Enough not to give in. One night, I woke up with the weight of his arm over me. Not affection, possession. I gently moved it away. He murmured something about being cold. I turned to the other side. His body reacted. Mine didn't. That small physical distance was felt. The next morning, he tried to resume the old pattern. Decisions stated in the plural. Light jokes. I didn't confirm. I didn't deny. I just didn't step in. The atmosphere shifted. A low, constant static. I breathed better anyway. I understood, with new clarity, that truth doesn't always arrive as material proof. Sometimes it arrives as a chorus. Small voices from the outside, confirming what the body has known for years. Ignoring that would mean burying myself again. I wouldn't. By the end of that week, I was tired but steady. Fear was still there, now mixed with clarity. and clarity changes the game. He still had power, but he no longer had absolute silence. And when silence changes hands, control begins to crack. When I walked into the house that night, I felt it before I saw it. The air was different, too quiet. He wasn't distracted like usual. He was alert, standing, waiting. There was no question, no words. He moved towards me quickly and wrapped me in a firm, immediate hug, like someone trying to contain a movement before it happens. His arms closed with calculated force. Too long, too close. My body didn't relax. The hug didn't comfort. It adjusted. I felt his hand pressing into my back, not to soothe, but to hold. His breathing was fast, shallow, uneven. His face close to my ear. A whisper that tried to sound caring but brought no calm. I was worried. Worry doesn't restrain. That did. I didn't respond. I didn't pull away. I stayed still. The silence between us grew. He held on a few seconds longer, like he was waiting for my body to return to its familiar place. It didn't. In that interval, everything revealed itself. It wasn't longing. It wasn't late love. It was fear. Fear of losing access. Fear that I had seen what had always worked in the shadows. His body spoke louder than any apology ever could. When he finally let go, he stepped back and watched me. He wasn't looking for affection. He was looking for signs, trying to read my face so he could recalibrate control, the way he had for years. I kept my expression neutral. I offered nothing. In that moment, I felt something unexpected. Detachment. Not coldness, but understanding. When you understand, the gesture loses its power to confuse. The hug that used to scramble me now exposed itself. He tried to carry on with the night as if nothing had happened. Trivial comments, a glass of water. The TV turned on. I participated minimally. Every word felt unnecessary. My body stayed alert, but firm. In the bedroom, he took longer to lie down. When he did, he took up more space than needed. A leg pressed against me, a heavy arm over my body. Possession again. I turned to the opposite side with a small but definitive movement. His body reacted immediately, tensed. His breathing changed. There was no argument. There was a silent rupture. Lying awake in the dark, I confirmed what was already clear. That hug had been a late attempt to push me back into the old place, to send me back underground, to the emotional space where I breathed less and obeyed more. But now I recognized the gesture, and when you recognize it, the disguise falls. From that night on, every touch, every word, every silence from him was read through the correct lens. I wasn't confused anymore. I was lucid, and lucidity is the beginning of the end for any control that depends on darkness. He didn't know it yet, but the axis had shifted. After that hug, the atmosphere in the house changed for good. It wasn't silence, it was surveillance. He started watching me like someone who had lost the map and was trying to redraw the route while walking. The questions began popping up at odd moments. Are you going out? What time will you be back? There was no real interest in the answers. What he wanted was predictability. The less I offered, the more restless he became. I noticed something I'd never noticed before. His body started betraying what his voice tried to hide. His breathing shortened when I took too long. His fingers tapped when I didn't explain myself. His jaw tightened when I talked on the phone with someone he didn't know. For the first time, the discomfort wasn't mine. I kept taking small, concrete actions. I adjusted schedules, created commitments that didn't depend on him, organized documents in a discrete folder, changed simple passwords, nothing dramatic, everything reversible, just enough to test limits. At a dinner with acquaintances, he tried to reclaim his public persona, the attentive, kind, caring husband. When he interrupted me, like he always had, I didn't retreat. I kept speaking without asking permission. The conversation didn't stop. The world didn't collapse. The embarrassment stayed with him. On the drive home, the correction attempt came. You've been strange with people. The sentence carried a warning. I replied calmly, I'm being direct. I didn't explain. I didn't soften it. The silence that followed was heavy. The attempts at confusion became more explicit. "You're exaggerating. This is all in your head." Old phrases, now used with more force. The difference was that they no longer found empty space. I had records, organized memory, an attentive body. There was nowhere to plant doubt. I started protecting my time like something fragile. I went out without over-justifying. I came back without reporting everything. It wasn't provocation, it was boundary. He tested, I held. One night he tried to reassert intimacy with urgency, a more insistent touch, a kiss that asked for surrender. I pulled back calmly and said I was tired. His face changed before the rehearsed response arrived. Frustration surfaced, then was quickly hidden. I noted it. Later, lying in bed, I felt sadness. Not for him, for myself. For having spent so long believing love required constant adaptation. I let the sadness pass without guilt. It was information too. I knew I was entering a delicate phase. When control realizes it no longer works, it tries two things: to intensify or to invert the narrative. I needed to be ready for both. What he still didn't understand was simple. While he was trying to read me, I had already read the fear. And fear changes the game, because control needs darkness. When the light comes on, even faintly, the power starts to fail. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was setting my own pace. And for someone who had always decided everything, that was unbearable. The final confirmation didn't come in words. It came in a gesture, too fast to be calculated and too honest to be corrected afterward. It was an ordinary morning. I was putting my bag over my shoulder when he approached in a hurry. His hand closed around my arm, not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough to stop my movement. "We need to talk," he said quietly. It wasn't an invitation. It was restraint. In that second, everything aligned. His eyes didn't look for mine. They scanned the room, checking whether we were alone. When he realized no one would see, he loosened his grip and tried to smile, as if nothing had happened. Too late, the body speaks before intention. I took a step back, small, clear. I didn't apologize, I didn't soften it. I simply created physical space between us. He blinked quickly, recalculating. "You've been strange," he said, using the tone that had always worked. It didn't. In that moment, I understood something definitive. This wasn't love trying to save a relationship. It was control trying to survive. The difference is invisible to someone who's confused, impossible to ignore to someone who's awake. I left the house without arguing. I went for a walk, sat in a cafe, watched people living without being monitored. Other people's normalcy exposed the distortion I had called marriage for so long. When I came back, he was talking too much, explaining things I hadn't asked about, trying to anticipate my words, the way he always had. But now it sounded like involuntary confession. People who feel secure don't over-justify. That night there was another hug, different this time, shorter, less firm, a test. I felt the hesitation. I responded with neutrality. I didn't offer comfort. He stepped back, frustrated. Lying down afterward, I thought about the path that had brought me there, the body that warned me, the records that held me steady, the small distances that turned into clarity. I didn't need any more external proof. The gesture had betrayed itself. That night I made the most important decision of all, and the quietest one. I wouldn't confront him seeking recognition. I wouldn't ask him to understand. I would act toward an exit. Some prisons don't have visible bars. They're sustained by confusion. When confusion ends, the door appears. I had just seen it. I still didn't know how I would cross it, but I knew where I was, and that changes everything. I didn't announce anything. I simply started acting. The following week, I organized documents the way you organize your breathing. Certificates, statements, old contracts, nothing dramatic, everything quiet. Each paper separated, lowered the internal noise. It wasn't escape, it was preparation. I began choosing times when the house was empty. I called a professional recommended by someone I trusted and scheduled an objective conversation. I didn't ask for emotional advice, I asked for information. I left with clear options, not promises. That grounded me. At home, I kept the routine just enough not to trigger alarms. Short answers, minimal politeness, no unnecessary discussions. I watched how he tried to reclaim space with bigger gestures, out-of-context gifts, sudden invitations, performative care. I thanked him without committing. My body confirmed each step. I slept better on the days I handled something concrete. My appetite returned when I completed a practical stage. There was no euphoria, there was stability. I knew it wasn't impulse because there was no rush. I kept documenting dates, phrases, gestures, not out of obsession but protection. Memory gets pressured, paper doesn't. Each record was a solid point in what used to be confusion. I also told very few people. Simple sentences. I'm reorganizing my life. No details, no long justifications. Those who needed to understand did. Those who didn't weren't essential at that moment. There were hard nights, real fear, not of violence, but of emotional retaliation, of inverted narratives. I prepared for that with practical care. I adjusted boundaries, reduced exposure, protected what could be distorted. It wasn't paranoia, it was prudence. In one final attempt at conversation, he asked for honesty. I offered enough truth to avoid lying and avoid exposing myself. I said I needed time. Time is dangerous for those who control. He realized it and backed off, pretending to understand. That's when the shift consolidated. I stopped trading dignity for temporary peace. I accepted that discomfort would be temporary and freedom lasting. That week, I opened a separate account, reviewed passwords, defined who would have access to my decisions if I needed it. Small actions, all legal, all reversible. Together, they formed a route. I watched how he reacted as he noticed new limits. First charm, then contained irritation, then punitive silence. I stayed consistent. I didn't provoke. I didn't retreat. Consistency dismantles games. When I turned off the light that night, I felt something rare. Trust. Not in the outcome, but in the process. I was treating myself with loyalty. I knew the next phase would require making visible what had always been subtle. Not yet. Not that way. Time was now working in my favor because I had stopped chasing false peace. I would continue, step by step, without announcement, without an audience, because getting out alive doesn't require speed. It requires method. I chose an ordinary day on purpose. No symbolic dates, no emotionally charged setup. I wanted clarity, not empty catharsis. He sat at the table the way he always did, confident, comfortable, as if that space still belonged to him by right. I sat across from him. I didn't start with accusations. I started with facts, dates, exact phrases, specific situations, no raised voice, no irony, just putting the pieces where they belonged. At first, he smiled, that light smile that had always dissolved discomfort. It didn't work. When he realized I wasn't following, he changed strategy, said I was sensitive, that I was exaggerating, that it was all in my head. I waited for him to finish. Then I continued. I opened the notebook, not as a threat, as a reference. I read short excerpts, objective situations. The room shifted. For the first time, interruption found no space. When he tried to cut me off, I calmly but firmly asked him to let me finish. He fell silent, not out of respect, out of surprise. What followed was predictable. First, denial, then justification, then contained irritation. His tone rose slightly. He didn't shout. He tried to flip the narrative, said I was destroying the family, that I owed gratitude, that I'd always been difficult. I listened the way you listen to something already familiar. None of it moved me anymore. When he finished, I said only what mattered, nothing extra, that I no longer accepted being interrupted, corrected in public, or described as confused to justify control, that I wouldn't debate emotional versions, that the decision had been made. The word decision changed the air in the room. He tried to retreat through emotion, a vague apology, a rehearsed hug that I declined with a simple hand gesture. No aggression, no fear. My body followed what my mind had already resolved. I explained the next steps with practical clarity. Separation of spaces, financial organization, objective communication, no threats, no dramatic deadlines, just structure. He listened with a tense face, tried to negotiate on emotional ground. I stayed on the concrete one. There was a long silence afterward, heavy. He was breathing fast. I was breathing fully. In that moment, I felt something that didn't come from him, respect for myself. I didn't need him to understand. I only needed to exit the dynamic. In the days that followed, the truth held on its own. When he tried to retell the story to others, he met resistance. Coherence was no longer with him, not because I campaigned, because I held my posture. Control didn't fall with noise. It fell from lack of nourishment. The following Christmas, the table was different, smaller, simpler. I was present, whole. When I spoke, I wasn't interrupted. When I was silent, it was by choice. The woman buried alive the year before didn't return. In her place sat someone who could breathe. Justice didn't come as public punishment. It came as a reorganization of power, as dignity restored, as the end of a cycle that only existed because I carried it alone. I didn't need to defeat anyone. I needed to get out alive, and I did. After the conversation, the house didn't feel tense. It felt emptied of command. The furniture was in the same place, the sounds were the same, but the pressure had left the air. I walked through the rooms without anticipating reactions. That was new. In the first few days, he tried to act as if nothing had changed. Practical comments, neutral questions, a politeness that was almost too careful. There was no affection in it, only an attempt at normalization. I kept my posture simple and firm, civil, without reopening old doors. I noticed something curious. Without my automatic silence, he seemed smaller, not diminished as a person, but as a force. His sentences lost conviction. Decisions no longer came with that absolute tone. Control, when it falls, doesn't explode, it deflates. There were uncomfortable moments, lingering looks, heavy silences, subtle attempts to provoke guilt, comments about the past, as if trying to reactivate an old agreement. I didn't engage. My body no longer reacted with tightness. My mind stayed clear. There were also hard days for me, a calm sadness without drama, grief for what never was. For the years I adapted too much. I let it pass. I didn't turn it into guilt. I understood that rebuilding also requires space to feel. Little by little, small changes became visible. I spoke and wasn't interrupted. I chose and didn't explain myself. When someone tried to decide for me, I corrected it naturally, without anger, without fear. Dignity returned through simple gestures. I organized my days carefully. Predictable routines, small choices, commitments that were mine, morning walks, defined hours, a rhythm that didn't depend on anyone's mood. External stability reinforced the internal one. There was one last attempt at emotional reapproach, a request for a long talk, a more vulnerable tone, a proposal to start over. I listened respectfully. When he finished, I thanked him for the honesty and said my path was already elsewhere. There was no argument. There was closure. After that came something new, quiet acceptance, not deep understanding, not friendship, just the recognition that control was over. That was enough. That week, I sat alone in the living room at the end of the day and took a deep breath. The silence didn't hurt anymore. It rested. I hadn't rebuilt everything yet, but I had recovered something essential, my place in the world. And when you return to your own place, the rest reorganizes itself with time. What truly changed wasn't the house. It was me. There was no official announcement day, no external milestone to call a fresh start. There were mornings when I woke up and realized I was breathing without effort, that my body no longer braced itself to be interrupted, that my decisions didn't apologize before existing. That's when I understood. I had come back whole. The submissive version of me never returned from that Christmas. She stayed buried there, along with the habit of asking permission to take up space. In her place, emerged someone quieter but solid, someone who didn't need to assert herself, only to remain. Over time, I made small gestures that changed everything. I bought a smaller table, just for me. I placed it near the window. I started sitting there in the mornings to write a few lines without any grand purpose, just to hear my own thoughts without interference. That simple habit became my daily point of return. He continued reorganizing his own narrative as best he could. I continued organizing my life through concrete choices, not out of revenge, out of coherence. I didn't need to convince anyone. Those who lived close to me felt the difference. Those who needed to understand did, quietly. I learned that justice doesn't always make noise. Sometimes it shows up as the absence of fear, as the ability to say no without trembling, as the right to sit at the table without shrinking your shoulders, as the rest that comes when you stop monitoring yourself. The following Christmas was simple. Few people, no performance. I spoke when I wanted to. I was silent when I chose to be. No one decided for me. When I stood up from the table, I felt something rare, lightness without guilt. Today, when I think about the night I was buried alive, I don't feel anger. I feel clarity. I understand that control only thrives where silence is imposed. When silence becomes a choice, power changes hands. If you made it this far, you may recognize something of your own story here. You may still be in the middle of the process. I can only say one thing, with honest maturity. Getting out alive doesn't require speed. It requires listening to your body, to your intuition, to your dignity. It's never too late to come back to yourself. If this story spoke to you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to breathe again. And tell me in the comments, at what moment did you realize you needed to come back alive to yourself?